Today is an especially exciting episode, in my opinion, because we are going to talk, just you and me, no one else is here. We're going to talk about the 13 lessons I want you to know about from my 13 years of living with type 1 diabetes. We'll get into it in the episode, but just so you know, I just had my diaversary and my diabetes is now a teenager. I hope she doesn't get too sassy, but either way, we're going to figure it out. So join me for this episode and let's learn a few lessons. Hey y'all, my name is Maddie Cheever. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, certified health education specialist, type 1 diabetes specialized coach, and the face and founder of Type 1 Type Fun. And I also live with type 1 diabetes. I share stories, resources, and tips to make diabetes management easier and a lot more relatable and fun. All right, welcome back to another episode where guess what? It's going to be just you and me, but stick around because we are talking about why your A1C does not tell the whole story. We're going to learn a little bit about what can help you to find some more information and some of the truth or some of the myths surrounding A1C in general. So buckle up because it's going to be a fun lesson today. All right, so you know the drill. We're here to learn about A1C today, but we're not actually learning about A1C itself. We're learning about a lot surrounding A1C. So I'm going to tell you just a quick story about two people who had the same A1C that I worked with. Their A1C was 7.0%. And I actually worked with them around a similar time, which is very interesting that we got to do that direct comparison. Now, person A spent their day bouncing between 60 to 250, and constantly correcting themselves, constantly treating lows. They were exhausted from the roller coaster. It was the overcorrection into the high, into the overcorrection, into the low, into the overcorrection, into the high. It was just this never ending cycle. Person B was steady. They hung out between 100 to 170, 180, 190 most of the day, rarely going low, feeling good, living their best life, and also rarely going that much higher. Same A1C, very different experience. That lesson itself shows you a little bit about why A1C does not paint the whole picture. So today, I'm going to break down why A1C doesn't tell the whole story, and I'm going to tell you why you need to stop letting that number define your success with diabetes and some other numbers you can look at. So, first things first, what does A1C actually measure? If you have type 1, you might be familiar. If you have type 1, you may not be familiar. If you're a supporter, an individual who's just curious, I'm glad you're here. These are the basics. So, A1C, hemoglobin A1C, is a approximate 3-month average of your blood sugar. It is basically a snapshot of what's going on. Now, it's about 3 months at a time because, if you don't already know this, A1C reads your red blood cells, and red blood cells regenerate about every 3 months. So, that's why you get an A1C done at least every 3 months. It's literally just an average. And if you are a math whiz, then you know what that means. If you're not, A1C is an average. Averages can hide a lot. Okay. Think about, again, the average of 60 to 250 or 20 to 2000. Very different stories, right? So you can have a clinical standard good A1C from constant blood sugar yo yos, the highs, the lows, canceling each other out, overcorrecting, rebounds, you name it. You can also have a higher A1C, but incredible time in range with minimal variability. One person I used to work with was just constantly at 180, almost to a T. Their average was 180. Their standard deviation was like 18. We'll get into that number later, but it doesn't capture, A1C itself does not capture how you feel day to day. It doesn't capture your mental health. It doesn't capture how many lows you've had. It doesn't tell you your variation. It doesn't tell you your quality of life. There's so many aspects that it misses. A1C is just an average. It doesn't tell you so many things. Now, here's another thing. I've had A1Cs that were great on paper, but I was miserable. My blood sugar wasn't working. I was exhausted. I was burned out. It didn't make sense. I was annoyed. I was constantly chasing lows. I was living in a little bit of fear. It was just not success. It was survival. It was survival. Now, I've also had A1Cs that are incredible on paper and they feel pretty great in real life too. So, your A1C, in more detail, what doesn't it show you? It doesn't show you your time in range. You could be 90% in range with a slightly elevated A1C, or you could be 50% in range with an elevated A1C. Which scenario do you think is healthier? Well, if your A1C was the same, but your time in range is a little higher, I would say maybe the one with more time in range would actually be of benefit to you. Glycemic variability is also something that it doesn't touch. Blood sugar variation. It's the roller coaster, the exhaustion of your hard work, the impact on your body. Stable blood sugars, even if a little bit higher, often can feel better than constant extreme swings. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it, but I'm going to take it. So, your CGM, if you wear one, can show you this, but your A1C does not. Like your A1C can't tell you the roller coaster, right? If you looked at someone's A1C, you might assume it looks a certain way, but you can't actually know. Now, A1C also doesn't tell you the mental health, the burnout. Like I've said, you can't have a perfect A1C and be completely burned out. Okay. I'm going to say that again. You can have a wonderful A1C and feel completely burned out. If you are that individual who goes to your endocrinologist and they're like, oh, yep, you're doing great. See you in 3, 6 months, whatever, but you feel so not supported, maybe I'm talking to you. It doesn't talk about restriction. It doesn't talk about perhaps obsession. It doesn't talk about perfectionism. It doesn't talk about the sustainability or the lack of sustainability for all of those things. Now, if getting a wonderful A1C means you're miserable, anxious, can't enjoy food, can't live your life, you're trying to be diabetic and not, living your life and also having great blood sugar management, I'd argue that's not worth it. Again, a personal opinion, so take it or leave it, but I just don't think it is. Now, it also doesn't tell you how often you're low. I know I've already said this, but your hypoglycemic frequency is not shown with your A1C. In fact, the more lows you have, the better your A1C is probably going to look on paper. That is not necessarily a thing we want to accomplish. Having dangerous lows multiple times a day or a week in order to have one number that people see every few months look decent. I don't know. I don't think that it's exactly what we want it to be. A slightly higher A1C that has zero lows might often be the safer, smarter choice. It might be. It might not be. It depends on you. But especially if, let's say, you live alone and you need to rely on feeling your lows. Having less lows help you feel your lows. Maybe you are in a job where you can't really be as focused on your blood sugar. Feeling your lows and theoretically not having very many can make a world of difference when the time really comes where you need something. It also doesn't tell you about your quality of life, like at all. Can you travel? Can you eat foods you love? Can you sleep through the night? That's a big one. Can you exercise without fear and move your body with confidence? And honestly, I think that all of those things, again, personal, take it or leave it. But I think all of those things matter so much more than one single number on one single piece of paper every few months. That's just me. I think the metrics matter more than just A1C. They can at least. So here's what to focus on instead of A1C, or maybe I should say in addition to A1C, because A1C is, the screenshot, the snippet, but not the full picture. Number one, you could focus on time and range. Typically, clinical providers will want you to be 70% or higher for your time and range for a range of 70 to 180 milligrams per deciliter. This can often show a little bit of consistency better than A1C ever could. Think about if your A1C was 6%, but your time in range was 20%. What would that tell you? Just that alone, what might that show you? To me, I would say that's probably a lot of lows throughout the days. Something we could figure out, something we could resolve. We could probably have the exact same A1C for much higher time in range. In fact, I know we can make that happen. And it might not actually be that different in your life. different in the way that it's not as much burden from diabetes, but, like, it's not like you have to overhaul everything, stop all the fun things, like, you don't have to do that. You get to live your life still, which I think is important. Now, time below range is something else that might matter more. How low are you going? How often? How severe? Reducing those lows can sometimes be a little bit more advantageous than simply lowering A1C. Lows can potentially be life ending. And I know that is extreme, but it is true. It's scary and it's tough, but it is a possibility. So having less lows for a slightly higher blood sugar, I'm sorry, a slightly higher A1C to make sure that you get to live this long, beautiful life, I think that that's a metric worth looking at. Coefficient of variation is another one. It's kind of like standard deviation. And now, to be clear, a lot of these numbers you'll see on a CGM report. If you use a manual monitor, you'll want some um, probably data tool or software to help you out here. But coefficient of variation, it also measures your blood sugar variability. I often look at standard deviation primarily because I think numbers make more sense than percentage sometimes. But our goal is also to have that be a little bit lower. If I'm remembering correct, I think that we definitely want it under 40%. I think the number is 36. Forgive me, I should double check that one. But um, standards may also change, so pay attention to that. But a lower CV just basically means we have more stable blood sugars and potentially more quality of life. I don't know. Stability sounds nice to me. Also, a metric that I don't think we get asked about enough in our doctor's appointments is how do you feel? What are your energy levels? What's your mental clarity? How's your emotional well being? How are you sleeping? Literally, all of the things about you. These metrics can matter so much more for actually living your life. Now, here is my perspective. You may take it or leave it, but I'd rather have a 7% A1C with 75% time in range, minimal lows, and not too many highs, and a life that I actually enjoy living, as opposed to a 6.0 A1C through restriction, fear of food, not living my life, putting myself in a diabetes box, all of the things. So, how do we reframe that? If you're thinking, okay, I see your point, Maddie, but maybe you're not there. If you're already there, I love that. And these are some good reminders. But if you're not there, this might be helpful. Let's reframe. So, just to be clear, success with type 1 diabetes is not about perfection. Success as a human is not about perfection either. It's not about perfect numbers. It is not about impressing your endo. It's not about comparing yourself to others, comparing yourself to anyone you see online, sacrificing your quality of life for a decimal point. Reminder. Success might, though, it might be about, or for many of us, it is about feeling good in your body and having energy to like actually live your life and managing diabetes without it managing you, if that makes sense. It's about sustainable habits that work for your life, not mine, not your endos, not your cousin, not your neighbor, you, your life. Mental health, I think, and emotional well being are also alongside that physical health. And I think that those can be just as important too. So here's my thought for you. The next time you see your A1C, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Number one, how do you feel about it? What do you notice? Number two, how do you feel most days? Number three, are you having scary lows? Number four, are you constantly over adjusting, overcorrecting, high, low, high, low? Five, can you actually live the life that you want to live? And maybe last but not least, I think there's more questions we could ask, but I'll leave you with the sixth one. Is what I'm doing sustainable for me long term? That can be a hard one to answer, but if your answers are where we want them to be, your A1C is just a data point. It doesn't define you. It does not tell the whole story, and it definitely does not get to determine whether you're succeeding at living well with type 1 diabetes. So, with that being said, your A1C is useful information, but it is not the only information, and it is not the most important information. In case you haven't heard it a ton of times, You are so much more important than a number. Okay. Your worth is not tied to your A1C, no matter how much people may say it. Diabetes is such a big, full picture. And A1C simply cannot cover that full picture. Now, if you made it this far, I hope I've validated you, or I hope I've influenced you a little bit in seeing that you are awesome. A1C is just a number. And there are a lot of things that you can do to help that A1C. If you need support with your A1C, if you're like, yeah, I understand that, but maybe you really do want your A1C to come down and you don't want to suffer the consequences of not living your best life. Maybe you don't want the restriction, the burnout, the overwhelm, the overcorrections, the roller coaster. I respect that. There's several things they can do for you. Number one, I want to make sure that you have a free copy of my book. It's linked below. There's a lot of education in the back part of it. You can skip to part 5. You don't have to read the whole front of the book to understand the last part. I encourage you to start there. Start there, read through, gather some concepts. If anything doesn't make sense, reach out. But that is one way that you can start to help your A1C without your A1C taking over. From there, too, I also want you to reach out. Need anything? Have questions? Want support? Maybe just need a little bit of a verbal pep talk, a hug, a virtual hug, if I can give you one. You deserve that and so much more. And if that's something that I can do for you, reach out. It's the very least I could do. So thank you for coming to this quick little bonus podcast episode today. I hope that this has been so beneficial. I'm excited to get to see you on another episode. But for now, go do something awesome. And remember, A1C is just a number. That's it for today, my friends, but the fun doesn't stop here. If you liked this episode and want more real talk diabetes support, come hang out with me on social. Just search Type 1 Type Fun, all words, or head to type1typefun.com for tools, tips, freebies, and real-life resources you can actually use. And if this episode made you laugh, learn, or feel a little more seen, feel free to leave a comment, give it a like, share it with someone you love. But until next time, live empowered, be silly, have fun, and eat some carbs.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast.